Welcome everybody, and it is with great pleasure to introduce you all to a very, very dear, who warms my heart, Frans Stiene from International House of Reiki. Frans is here today to present the way of Reiki. And Frans will explain why it is so important to practice in the right way. The first step in our practice is to know why we practice and how we have to practice. It is like making a cake. We need to know the right way to make a cake, else we might throw all the ingredients in the cake tin all at once, but that will not give us the right results. How can we practice the system of Reiki so that we can get the right results? And what is the right result? Sensei Usui pointed to laying bare our great bright light, our true self. Frans today will talk about the traditional Japanese ways to practice so that hopefully we can all lay bare our true self. So Frans will talk now for, I think, I don't know, for however long it is.
6 hours.
And then afterwards we will have time for Q&A. So yeah, here we go. Thank you, Frans. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's I'm in Holland, in a place called Haarlem. So it's 7 a.m. in the morning. So I had to wake up nice and early, which is great. Might go to bed after this. No, it's Sunday. So yeah, thank you for inviting me. I've been teaching the system of Reiki for now almost over 20 years worldwide. And when I first started to practice the system of Reiki, it was a very bit of a jumble up. It was great, don't get me wrong, it was still wonderful. And over the years, when I started to train more with Japanese teachers, it became clearer and clearer. And then since 2012, I'm training with a Japanese priest in Japan. And then it even became more and more clear. So Mikao Usui really gave us a fantastic system, and there's lots of different ways of practicing. One way is not better than the other way. Lots of different ways. But for me specifically, I think when we look at the system of Reiki, what Mikao Usui left us, we can see some very clear pointers to how to practice and why to practice, as Anita was saying that already. And for me, I see it a little bit as making a cake. So the first thing we have to do at making a cake, have a good idea how to make a cake, what kind of cake it is, and why do we want to make a cake? I mean, we're not going to make a cake to just let it sit there and get stale and all. So we make a cake, so we either can eat it ourselves, or maybe we have friends coming over, or maybe we want to give the cake to someone. So first of all, why do we want to make the cake? Why do we want to practice? And the more we know why, for example, if I know, say, I want to make a cake for Anita, and I know Anita, and I know she has a nut allergy, then I'm not going to make a nut cake, right? Because then that would not be so healthy for her. So I have to know why I want to make a cake in the first place. Why do I want to practice? The more I understand why I want to practice, then also I start to see the outcome of the practice, right? So again, if I want to make a nut cake, then I'm going to get a nut cake. If I don't want to make a nut cake and I put nuts in it, then I get still a nut cake. So this is what they call, what seed are we planting? So for example, if I'm planting an apple seed for an apple tree, I don't get pears, right? It's very simple. So these, for example, we can very clearly see within the precepts. If I plant anger, then my life will be angry. If I plant worry, my life will be worrisome. If I plant gratefulness, etc. This is a wonderful teaching. Some people, we like to look at the past and they say, oh, my past, or maybe even past lives, but let's say just the past. And we can really easily check what happened in the past by looking at how we are now. What have we planted in the past? Because that really gives the fruit right now, right today. So if I have been planting in the past anger and worry, then today I might feel not really stable within myself. I might get quickly angry and worried. Sometimes we like to focus on the future and say, oh, I wonder how the future will be. But for that, really, we also have to look at the present moment. What are we planting today, right? So also within the precepts, we see the word today. So what are we planting today? Am I planting anger? Am I planting worry? Then that will give fruit maybe tomorrow or next year or in 5 years' time. Or am I planting kindness, gratefulness, being true to my way, my being, etc. So by already looking at this, we can see that it is very important to know why. Why do we practice and what are we planting? What are we planting? So sometimes we say, okay, I'm practicing to heal the pain in my knee, or I'm practicing to help someone else maybe heal their pain in their back. What is wonderful, but that is the outcome then, what you're planting. So if I'm focusing just on healing my physical body, then we might not necessarily heal the mind. My knee might be better, but I might still be an asshole, right? That makes sense. So therefore, even when we start at level 1, we need to have a look. And if you are a Reiki teacher, then you would understand in Reiki 3, we work with the symbol and mantra. If you literally translate it, it means great bright light. And this is the light of your true nature, of your true self, of who you really are. So that is really the outcome, right? So the outcome is not healing our knee or healing pain in our shoulder. Mikao Usui from the beginning pointed out that the outcome is a state of mind. And we can very clearly see this within the precepts. If we look at the precepts, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be true to your way and your being, or we can sometimes translate it as work hard or practice diligently, but we can talk a little bit about it later, and show compassion to yourself and others. So these are all a state of mind. There is nothing about pain in your head or those kind of elements. So therefore, the most profound healing, if we really think about it, is not necessarily healing ourselves from cancer or pain in the knee, but is really that state of mind. Of course, it would be great if we can also heal our cancer or pain in the knee, but we all die one day. We cannot stop it. And so therefore, the precepts are also pointed to how do we die? Do we die with anger? Do we die with worry? Or do we die without anger and worry? And can we die gratefully or gracefully? Or can we die true to our way in our being and kind and compassionate? Because it's not our physical body what we take with us, right? We all know that if we see someone pass away, one moment that person is there or the animal, and the next moment we say, oh, the person is left. But the body hasn't left, the body is still there. But something has left what we really call the person. That is that great bright light, their mind, their essence, their true self. So this is really what we need to heal. And that is the seed we have to plant from the beginning. Already actually in our Reiki 1, or maybe if we're teaching or if we're practicing Reiki 1, then we have to already say, okay, I'm doing this practice to lay bare my great bright light or lay bare my true self. Of course, within that is also physical healing, but that physical healing doesn't always happen, right? We all have maybe from birth some weak points in our body. Maybe it doesn't heal. Maybe we all die, right? So, but again, we can change our mind, and therefore, when we do get physically sick, and we all will have something because we also all grow old, then we can deal with it because we have healed the mind. That makes sense? So this is when we learn how to, from the start already, why do we practice? Then we kind of also know how to prepare ourselves and what to do. Why am I climbing the mountain, for example? If I know why I climb to the mountain, then I have to investigate, how do I climb the mountain? I cannot, maybe with my physical constitution, I might not be able to climb straight up. I might need to circle around the mountain, or maybe I can zigzag up to the mountain. So therefore, the clearer we know why I want to make the cake, then I also know what kind of ingredients I need to buy and get, right? So if I need to make that cake for Anita, who's got a nut allergy, I'm not sure, but then I know I should not buy cake, or I should not buy nuts, right? I need to buy flour, maybe have to even check with some of the ingredients. Is there actually some nut stuff in this? Because I want to help Anita to its fullest. So then we get the cake ingredients, right? Now we need to know how to make the cake. First of all, we prepare, right? So preparation in our practice is also important. So for example, if I go here to the kitchen, the first thing I do is really clean the kitchen bends. If there's lots of stuff there and it's filthy and dirty and there's a mold, then my cake will also be filthy, dirty, and moldy, right? Because I'm going to make the cake on this filthy, dirty kitchen top. So that's the first preparation. We prepare a spot where we're going to make the cake. So we first say, I'm preparing a spot where I'm going to practice. That could be just a simple chair. But is the chair in the right height, for example? Does the chair or the bench or the pillow I'm sitting on, does it make me slouchy? Or does it make me actually sit back? Or does it make me sit straight? Very simple. Do I feel comfortable here? Is it the spot for me where I feel here can I practice? This is a nice, clean, tidy spot. If it's messy, maybe we're all different, of course, but for me, the other day I had someone come and visit my apartment who lives underneath me. I live on the 11th floor. She lives on the 10th floor. She's 72. And she came in and she said, oh, your apartment looks different. It's exactly the same apartment. She said, mine is very cluttered. So for me, if I have a space, what is nice and open and not cluttered, and automatically my mind will also start to be much more into that space, right? So then we grab the ingredients and we put it on the kitchen top. Well, when we make a cake, we're not just grabbing all the ingredients, put them all together in one bin or kitchen tool or mixing tool or a cake tin, right? We do it in a very specific order, because if we don't do it in a very specific order, the cake, what comes out, is also not so good. That makes sense too, right? So Mikao Usui actually put a very specific order in his system. Already very easy, we can see this within Reiki 1 or 2 or 3. We don't learn, for example, the attunement or Reiju or initiation, what we call it in Reiki 1. We learn it in Reiki 3. In Reiki 2, we learn very specific symbols and mantras. they also are in a specific order. So you first learn this first one, and then the second one, and the third one. You don't learn first the third one, and then, do you know what I'm saying? So we can see that he placed them in a very certain order for very specific reasons. The more we know the reason, the easier it is to make the cake. The easier it is to get this very specific outcome. So again, if I want to make an apple cake, then I need to put the apples also in a certain order. And then we need to put the flour in and maybe the eggs. I'm not so good with cooking, but you get the gist. So if I don't do it in that order, then maybe what comes out of the oven might even not be edible. And this is very important. So if I want to make a cake, why, how, and then I get a decent result if I start off. So first of all, then I can check the result, right? Is it an apple cake? Is it a nice apple cake? I can taste it. So again, if we know why we're practicing, for example, if we really want to get the fullest out of the system of Reiki, then we look at the precepts. The word precepts in English can also mean instructions. So they're instructing us how to practice, but also the outcome of the practice. So if I practice correctly, like making that cake in the right order, in the right way, then afterwards, after my practice, I might actually start to feel less angry. I might start to feel less worried. I might start to feel more grateful, more true to my way in my being, and more compassionate. If that after some years of practice is not happening, then I need to have a look at how am I practicing? Am I actually practicing in the right way? Am I making this cake in the right way? So each time I make an apple cake and each time it comes out that I can't eat it or can't give away to Anita, then I need to investigate, isn't it? I need to investigate, what am I doing wrong? Because now I know I'm doing something wrong. So therefore, if we truly know why we practice, we also start to see how to practice. And then we also start to see what is the outcome. And then we can check ourselves. Checking ourselves is not always easy because sometimes, for example, life goes smooth and we think, oh, I'm really have this down pat. I'm really feel stable. I have less anger. I've got less worry and then etc. And then suddenly something happens in life. Maybe we get an illness or a divorce or someone dies or we get COVID or whatever. Can we then maintain this state of mind as much as possible of no anger, being grateful, etc.? So the biggest hurdle we all get again is when we die, right? So this is really what Mikao Usui is pointing out. In the precepts, for example, we don't see anything written about energy, that we need to feel energy, or that we need to feel hot hands, or that we need to see colors or angels or flying unicorns, for that matter of fact. It doesn't say anything like that. In a way, if we really think about it, if I want to feel energy, that is not so difficult. I just have to stick my finger in the PowerPoint and I feel energy. It's quite easy. Also, if I want to see colors, it's also not so difficult. I just grab a metal bar, hit myself on the head, and I see beautiful colors and stars, maybe for one day, if I hit hard enough. So, but what is really difficult is today, in our daily life, have no anger and worry and being grateful and true to our inner being and compassionate, isn't it? That's the hardest thing. We all know this, right? We might feel it on our meditation pillow, but that is not today. Today means also when we wake up, when we go to bed, when we are asleep, right? When we do our actions in our daily life. So today, traditionally in Japan, means in every action we do today. It doesn't mean just when we do hands-on healing on someone. Also, there is no mention in the precepts about hands-on healing. Okay? It's all about a state of mind. We can ask ourselves, for example, when I do a hands-on healing, and I'm angry and worried, I'm not being grateful, I'm not being true to my way, my being, I'm not being compassionate, or I do a hands-on healing session, I'm not being angry, I'm not being worried, I am being grateful, I am being true to my way, my being, and I am being compassionate. Is there a difference or not? Of course, we all know there will be a difference. Very simple. Have you ever gotten a hug from someone who is angry or worried and who is not focused? Because when we're angry, we often think about the past, right? He or she or they did this to me 1 minute ago or 10 years ago. When we're worried, we worry about the future. Right? In 1 minute or 2 minutes or in 10 years' time. So it means we're distracted. And if you get a hug from a distracted person or who's angry and worried, then that feels very different than you get a hug from someone who is really focused. I have a friend here in Holland, and I go occasionally, we go for dinner. And when we talk, he is really like this. He is super focused. And you really feel someone is listening. Someone hears what you have to say. It feels very different than when you talk to someone who sits there like, yeah, no, that's nice. Yeah, okay, right? Because that person is less focused. And therefore, we feel less heard, less healing takes place. It's very simple. So it's the same when we do hands-on healing. Sometimes people say, okay, it's okay when we do hands-on healing, being distracted. We can watch television, we can talk, it's great. Don't get me wrong. We can still do some healing, but it's the same as when someone talks to me and is talking to me like this, right? The different way when we really focus, then it feels very different, isn't it? We feel a very different communication taking place between that person who is really focused with me or the person who is really distracted with me. And this is exactly the same in hands-on healing. Right? And for example, again, when we look at the state of mind, if I do hands-on healing on someone and I watch television, maybe I watch an action show, or maybe I watch the news. Well, what happens sometimes when we watch the news? We do get angry, we have feelings, we have sensations. Now this becomes infused into your hands-on healing. So therefore, Mikao Usui really put these pointers in the precepts. So, okay, we have the preparation. So the preparation really for our hands-on healing on ourselves and others, but also for the meditation practice, is first of all, that we put the body in the right posture. If the cake tin is not really right, the physical aspect, then we might not even get the cake out of the tin at all. Okay, so we can also see this in the precepts, because Mikao Usui said in the precepts, put your hands in gasho, right? This gasho really in Japan is not just the physical part of you putting your hands in it, but is your body posture. Use your body in the right way. Then it says, chant or recite with your mouth, right? So mouth and chanting in Japan is also linked to breathing and energy. So put your breath in the right posture. Now, if we look at anger and worry, where is my breathing if I'm angry and worried? It's up here, right? So when I'm really getting angry, I'm breathing like this and worried. When we're angry, we get a red face, for example, because our mind and breath is really up here. So if we look deeper within the precepts, we see we have to breathe deeply into our belly, into our centeredness. That center traditionally is your hara in Japan. So here's another instruction. And then the next one is keep in your mind, right? We can read in the precepts. So keep in your mind is the state of mind, not just for one moment, but as much as possible in all we do during our daily life. So we have body, we have breath and mind. In Japanese, this is called sanmitsu. But this is a little bit hidden within the precepts. We can see it actually written down. But if we know from a more traditional Japanese perspective, then we can see also these instructions that we put the body in the right posture, that we put the breath in the right posture, and then we put the mind in the right posture. But this, again, we all know already, right? We all know this already. So just before that, I saw Anita sitting with a baby. When we hold the baby, we need to put the body in the right posture, right? If I just put the baby on my lap and my hands are like this, then the baby might roll off and I'm sitting on a chair and the baby falls on the ground. Simple, right? The more I sit straight, the easier it is. If my mind is in the right place, if I'm not distracted by other things, then also I can hold the baby much better, right? Then the baby starts to feel this energy, this love, this interconnectedness. The baby starts to calm down. It's very simple. We all know this, but often we don't see it within the system of Reiki. So these are all instructions. We have to do it. So then we come to, after we have done the preparation, and as I said before, we do the same with making a cake, but we do the same when we plant seeds, right? If I plant a seed somewhere, I have here a beautiful park and I'm just planting it somewhere without preparation, without thinking about it, it might not come up. I might plant it under a tree and there is no sun or rain and seed doesn't come up. So we might plant the seed of the precepts. We might say, this is what I want out of the system of Reiki, that I embody the precepts in all I do. But if that's all I say in my mind, then it's like planting a seed underneath a tree and it's never come up, right? I have to prepare the garden. Then I have to water it. I have to water it. I have to look on the instructions on the little seed packet, how to water it. If I water it too much or doesn't give the right sunshine, again, it's not going to grow. So it's the same again for me. First, I want embodiment of the precepts in all I do. Hands-on healing is great. Don't get me wrong. It's wonderful, but it's limiting. Particularly, we might have seen this during COVID. Everything was in lockdown. People didn't really want to be touched. So what? Can we not do hands-on healing then? Of course we can do healing. Just be kind to people. Just be love to people. Just be grateful to people. Just no anger, no worry. That makes sense? So when we think about, for example, that great bright light pointed out in Reiki 3, or in Reiki 2, for example, we have a meditation practice, Hatsureo, what means emanating a greater amount of ray, of spirit. This spirit is light. This spirit is no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to your way, and being compassionate. So the precepts are actually a description of your spirit, of that great bright light, of your essence. Your essence is not angry. Your essence is not worried. What is your essence? Your essence is being grateful, being true to their way of being, and being compassionate. That's it. So when we can emanate that, of course, people in your daily society can benefit from this. So during COVID, I had this really interesting experience. I was traveling less, actually hardly. Here in Holland, probably at the same as in Australia, a lot of times. Even this year, we had January, February, we were in complete lockdown here. And so I think this happened in January. I was at this cafe, just getting a takeaway coffee and little cake. I had to go to a meeting. And so while I was ordering that, the woman from the cafe who I know brings me the things. And behind me are two ladies. So I said, good morning. And I can't remember what I said. I don't even know these women. So then about 2 hours later, after my meeting, I'm going to walk back to my house. I pass this cafe again. I go like, it's now almost lunchtime. Maybe I get a little croissant and a coffee to take away. So I say, hey, Anne-Marie, can I have a coffee? And Anne-Marie go, oh, I have to tell you this, Frans. After you left this morning and the two women came to the counter, she had made the door in half because the cafes had to be closed, but you could order it like that. Said I was making their coffee what they ordered, and they were saying this. They said, oh, the one woman, do you know this guy? Yeah, I've seen him around. And the other going, yeah, he's always so happy. And when I see him, I start to feel happy too. I don't know, he just makes me happy. So that in itself is already healing. This is not, we don't always have to go like this. Then we might say, yeah, but happy is not healing. Of course, what happens to your body when you feel joyful? What happens to your energy when you feel joyful, right? That is already healing. So Mikao Usui was really pointing that out. In today, infuse everything you do with the precepts. That in itself is already healing. And from that space, if we then from that space might come across someone who wants hands-on healing, then fantastic. If not, we're still emanating this great bright light. But most of the time, this great bright light is being covered up by our anger and worry and fear, etc. Again, here's a wonderful story. Now the cafe is open. It's the same cafe. This actually happened 2 weeks ago, I think. And I was sitting inside chatting to one of the other staff members. And I was sitting where the glasses of the water, where you can just pick the glasses. And so this woman walks behind me and I said, oh, I pour one for you. So I gave it. And she made a little bit of eye contact, said something in English, and then she left. I was sitting for another 20 minutes in a cafe. And then when I walked out, this particular woman was sitting outside and she kind of again made eye contact and she started to engage in a conversation. And so then she goes, so what do you do? I said, well, I teach Reiki. And said, oh, this is great. She said, just the other day, I said to someone, I want to try a Reiki treatment and I'm not sure where it came from. I said, well, let's do it right now. And so she goes, okay. And her coffee was finished. She put on her jacket and she goes, where are we going? So she followed me home. No questions asked. We just chatted on my way home. I put the massage table up. She laid down. I did a hands-on healing treatment. During it, she started to cry. Then afterwards, she said, well, I've had a really difficult 2 months. She said she quit her job to become a coach. And she said, as soon as I quit my job, I realized I was pregnant. Then she realized that her boyfriend had been cheating on her. Then she got a miscarriage. So she said, okay, I need some time. I go to a friend in Holland. She was from Germany. So she arrives in Holland. Her friend is working. She ended up in Haarlem, sits in this cafe. Perfect. She said, oh, I don't have much money because I said, that's okay. You don't have to pay. This is great. Thank you. Bye-bye. So that way, again, is really, if I'm angry and worried, would that person have really talked to me? Right? So therefore, we already know that we engage more with people who are more open, who are more, good morning, how are you, whatever, right? So therefore, that is also your entrance into hands-on healing. It's quite simple. Okay, so we've done the preparation. So therefore, we also know when I do hands-on healing, if I stand like this, yeah, I'm just going to do some hands-on healing. My mind is there, then of course it's not so good. So again, with hands-on healing, we also want to make sure that we put our body in the right posture. the mind in the right posture of love and kindness and compassion, and our breathing, that we feel stable. Because sometimes, as we all know, during hands-on healing, certain things might come up. Can we deal with that? Do we feel stable? Do we feel secure? Okay, so we have done that now. We have put everything in the right place. And now we have to practice in the right way. We first maybe have to whisk the eggs. Then we might put some flour in, etc. So we do that cake in a very specific order. We not first put everything in the oven and then we start mixing it, right? True, right? So in Reiki 1, the first thing we learn is the precepts. It's the basis, it's the foundation, right? It's like the instructions, what we read on how to make a cake. First, take these ingredients, put them in this order, etc. Then we learn in a more traditional Japanese practice, Joshin Kokuho, breathing in the hara. Makes us feel grounded and centered and stable so that we don't get bowled over, that we feel, when we feel more grounded and centered, we can ask ourselves, if I'm more grounded and centered, do I feel more or less angry? Well, very simple. We feel less angry and worried. Then, of course, automatically, when I'm grounded and centered, I feel more grateful. I feel more that I can be myself, being more true to my way in my being, and that I feel more, therefore, compassionate. Compassion in the precepts comes last. Why? Because I have a lot of anger and worry, then it's very difficult for me to be compassionate. So, precepts, Joshin Kokuho, breathing in the hara, right? Then we also, in Reiki 1, we have Seisin Toichi. Seisin Toichi is another meditation practice. Again, it focuses on the heart. It also focuses on bringing the energy through the arms and up. Not just the energy, but also the mind. Seisin Toichi means really concentration. So here we are already learning how to concentrate. When our mind is more concentrated, what happens to our energy is also more concentrated. We all know this. If my mind is distracted while I'm making this cake, something might go wrong. Right? I might be cutting the apple and I might be distracted and suddenly my finger is in the cake instead of the apple because I was distracted. So therefore, the more I'm concentrated, the more I'm focused, the better the result. This is also why we have these meditation practices within the system of Reiki traditionally. It teaches us how to stay focused. Again, in my daily life, if I'm unfocused, do I get more or less angry and worried? If I'm focused, do I get less or more angry and worried? These are the questions we can ask ourselves really easily. Of course, then we have to answer really, if I'm more focused, I get less angry and worried, right? Because anger and worry is when we unfocused, when we get distracted by the past. Oh, he, she, or they did this to me last week. Well, then we're not focused on the present moment. All right. Oh, I'm worried about next week. Then we're also not focused on the present moment. So we're not focused. So anger and worry means we're not focused. So precepts, Joshin Kokuho, Seisin Toichi, meditation practices. Then we have hands-on healing. Really, first of all, hands-on healing in Reiki 1 for ourselves. How does it feel? How do I touch? Right? Do I touch with the precepts in mind, with that focus, or not? Right? So they're also in a very specific order. So first the precepts, so then we learn the focus meditation practices that we're more stable. Then it's much easier to do hands-on healing on ourselves. Make sense too? Right? If I feel more focused for myself when I do hands-on healing, or I feel distracted, try it at home. It's quite simple. You do hands-on healing while you talk, while you're distracted, or you do hands-on healing in a very meditative way, very focused, then we start definitely to sense and feel different things in our life. Maybe don't try this just once, try it a week really unfocused and a week really focused, and then see what the difference is. And then, of course, we also have Reiki initiation attunement in Reiki 1. What does that do? Really helping. Reiki traditionally means spiritual blessing. It helps us to lay bare more and more our own spiritual nature. What is this spiritual nature? This is why it's called spiritual. It is no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to our inner being, and being compassionate. Really, that is spiritual, isn't it? It's not about feeling energy or seeing colors or unicorns, because that sometimes actually can be the opposite of anger and worry and being grateful. I'll give you an example. Say that I really focus on my practice on seeing energy, or seeing a unicorn or feeling stuff. Then when I really focus, okay, yeah, and then suddenly I have this, does that make me less angry and worried? Does that make me grateful or not? Sometimes not. If we really, I know you all have encountered people like this. Oh, but I can feel energy. Yeah, I can see colors. I can read you. It becomes more arrogant, right? Doesn't necessarily become more grateful and compassionate. Oh no, I can sense this. I'm an empath, but you're not. Right? Is that compassionate or not? So we have to be very careful how we look at these things. That makes sense? Indeed, then it becomes very ego-based, Zoe. So therefore, it's very important that we know the structure of why we practice, how to practice, then we get the right result. Then it doesn't become ego-based. Oh, I'm a healer. I can heal you, right? This we come across a lot. So therefore, if I know why I'm practicing, that actually helps me to become more humble, right? And the embodiment of the precepts, then I can check myself, right? I can check the cake. When the cake comes out of the oven, or I open the oven to just check the cake, if I know what the result should be, then I know when the cake is ready, right? If I don't know what the result is of this cake, I take the cake out, I gave it to Anita, and the cake is not cooked, it's raw. So she can't eat it. It doesn't taste good. So again, here we can very clearly see that exactly the same happens within the system of Reiki. So now we've done Reiki 1. After we do this for a while, and that for me is not standard cookie cutter style, each person is ready in a different way. For example, I have a simple kitchen. I have a magnetron, oven, grill, all in one thing. So my oven is very different than if you have maybe just an oven, really one of those fancy ovens, what you have in a professional kitchen. Then of course the cake will have to be a different time in my oven than in the professional cake oven. True? Okay. So it's the same. We have different people. So some people can move from Reiki 1 to 2 a little bit faster. Some people need longer time. And then when we are in Reiki 2, we first start with symbol 1. And traditionally, this order is very specific. And if we look traditionally at these orders of these symbols and the mantras, it's really, again, building a foundation. So for example, in this case, we could look at it from a house. First, we built the floor, right? We don't start with a roof and then we do the floor, because then that will be very unstable. So we start first with that connection to groundedness, to earthiness, feeling really good and solid within ourselves. And then we slowly start to build the rest. We slowly grow, right? It becomes first really in that body. We make sure that the body is healthy, that the body feels good, that we feel really grounded in the body. This is spirituality is not outside of our body, right? It's not sitting there on a cushion like this, because if I sit like this and I think that is spirituality, then I cannot take that with me in my daily life. I need to take that with me in my body, right? My body goes to the supermarket. My body goes to work. So if I'm just being spaced out in my meditation pillow, then I'm probably will be spaced out in my daily life. And therefore, I cannot really see everything what's happening in my daily life. And therefore, I cannot really help people. So therefore, the first symbol and mantra really first the groundedness, and then slowly we start to build. And then maybe when we go to Reiki 3, we start to get that whole package that, oh, now in my body, I am Reiki. It's not something what hangs out here. I am this great bright light. I am this luminosity. I am in this space of no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to my way, my being, and being compassionate. Oh, and if I do get angry and worried, then I have the tools to center myself again, to bring myself back to my base, to my groundedness, to my focus, to that luminosity. And if I do get angry and worried, I'm going to be compassionate to myself. It's okay, Frans. The other day, I got a little bit angry and worried when they canceled my flight. I was saying to a friend yesterday, I said, I've been flying for around the world for about 20 odd years. This is the first time ever that this situation where normally your flight is canceled or it's not going, you ring up and it's, oh, no problem. We can book you in tomorrow in 2 days time or 3 days time. Sorry, sir, this time. Sorry. After about 2 hours checking on their computer, all the flights for July are booked out. And there's another 10,000 people waiting for you to go on the flight you want to go on. So, you know, but then when we do get angry and worried, okay, it's okay, fall back on your practice, right? So therefore, really important, no matter if we're just practicing for ourselves or if we're teaching, is to know that very specific structure. Why do we practice, right? If I know why do I practice, then I know what to get out of it. Apple, cake, or pear cake, or nut cake. And then I can get the right ingredients. So then I know, then I have to do the preparation and I have to clean everything. I have to measure how much flour and how many eggs and etc. Right? So it's the same. How often do I need to practice? Do I just practice once a day, or do I practice once a month and think then that's it? Or, and don't get me wrong, everybody, or do we, I often hear this, I do exactly the same still, don't get me wrong either. I might lay in bed, put my hands on myself and then fall asleep. But that is not really hands-on healing. I'm sleeping. I might even dream that I'm being eaten by a tiger. I might even wake up worried and fearful. That's not really focus and concentration. Of course, we might say that felt nice and I fell asleep quickly. Perfect, it's great, absolutely. However, does that really help me to become less angry and worried? If I only do this, if I only every day go to bed, put my hand on myself, fall asleep with the intention of practicing Reiki, does that really help me to lay bare my great bright light. If that was the case, we would see more enlightened Reiki teachers out there, or Reiki practitioners out there, who are less angry, less worried, being grateful. So sometimes we can check this with ourselves, right? Sit down and ask yourself, but you have to ask very honestly. This is really tricky, right? We have to ask ourselves really honestly. In my daily life, do I feel over time I have become less angry? Do I feel over time in my daily life? Do I feel I've softened my worry? Do I feel I'm a little bit more grateful? Not just for the good things, right? But also maybe for the not so good things. And normally we say, oh, I'm only going to be grateful for the nice coffee, for my great friends, but not when I get cancer. A while ago, this is actually some time ago, I was teaching in New York, and I went to this wonderful place to eat in the evening. It's called Italia, with eat, not Italia, but eating. And the tables are there pretty close to each other. So I'm sitting there, and there's two women sitting next to me with a younger child. And they are being served something, and it looks great. So I lean over, excuse me, what are you eating? And the woman goes, I ordered this. I said, wow, that looks great. She says, do you want to taste something? And she cuts something off, puts it on a little plate, and she gives it to me. I've just been teaching all day. I was with two other guys. And so I said, oh, that's very kind. So we engage a little bit in conversation. And then she tells me in the conversation, oh, I'm so grateful that I have cancer. I almost dropped my fork. I said, well, we just have been talking about this today. And I said, can I ask you, why do you feel grateful that you have cancer? And this is what she said. It was just mind blowing. She goes, well, I realized after I got cancer that I'm in a very toxic marriage. So I divorced. She said, I also realized after I got cancer that I'm in a very toxic, stressful work situation. So I quit my job. And she mentioned a couple of other things. And she said, I still have cancer, but I'm so much happier in my life than before I had cancer. So therefore, I'm really grateful for the cancer. The cancer has showed me what I need to let go of. I was just sitting there, wow, this is fantastic. So do you know what I'm trying to say? So these are little things, the precepts we can use to check with ourselves. Not do I feel more energy or do I see more colors, but really, can I be more kind to my fellow human beings? Can I be more compassionate? Because that is really where true healing starts to take place. This is how we can emanate this greater amount of light in all we do. And that is so important, particularly if we look at the world, the current situation in our world. Wouldn't it be great if we have a society where we all can be compassionate to each other? Wouldn't that be the most profound healing? Wouldn't we all feel more relaxed, more safe, more calm, therefore more happy, more joyful? What do you think would happen to your body? How many people these days have burnout or stress or take antidepressant, right? That is already an indication that our society is at the moment in the wrong shape. So therefore, what happens if we all soften our anger and worry, being more grateful, being more true to our way in our being, and being more compassionate? Then we create a healing society. So this is really, from a more traditional Japanese perspective, how they see the system of Reiki. Traditionally, in those systems, the word Reiki means kami or Buddha nature. So kami means your own divine being or your own Buddha nature. So it means that through the practice, you lay bare your divine being, your great bright light, your Buddha nature, what is in essence love and compassion. So indeed, it always starts with ourselves. And that is a really important element to realize that. I was in Japan some years ago with this teacher, with this priest. And at that time, I'd been a vegetarian. Some people know this story, but I still like the story. It actually taught me a lot. It's a simple story, but it taught me a lot. And I was vegetarian for 20 years. So I didn't eat fish or meat. So I'm staying at this temple with this priest. He cooks in the night. So the first night, vegetarian food. Second night, vegetarian food. Third night, raw fish on the table. And so we're going to eat. After dinner, he looks at me and said, now will I explain why I put raw fish on the table. He said, I know you're vegetarian. And afterwards, he was very kind, like the whole evening. How's your stomach, Frans? The next morning, are you feeling okay? Because you ate fish after 20 years, so it might affect your body. So he was very kind, but actually the way why he put the fish was, for me, if I call it rootless compassion, right? Because he wanted to see, did I get angry? Was I worried? Was actually grateful that he bought fish, went to the market, that he took effort, that he cooked it for me, that I had something to eat? Or was I not grateful? Did I, in fact, eat it or not eat it? Was I true to my way, my being? There was compassion, right? So all of these things, in fact, we cannot take one precept. We might say, oh, Frans, but you could have been true to your way and said, I'm not going to eat it. But then, is that compassionate to him? Or is it compassionate to me? Or is that an anger and worry? So the precepts are packaged in its whole. We cannot pull it apart. It's the same with a recipe where we need eggs in the cake. If I say, well, I don't need those eggs, take it out. Then maybe the cake again is not eatable. Right? So after this teaching, I go like, wow, sometimes we put ourselves, I'm vegetarian. I'm a meat eater. We actually put ourselves from one limited box into yet another limited box. We might say this is the meat eating box and this is the vegetarian box, but we still in a limited box. We still have boxed ourselves in a limited kind of mindset. And we still get angry and worried and fearful. I have a friend who's vegan. She got really sick and she didn't like that I said this, unfortunately, but said, yeah, but I'm also eat healthy. I eat great food. I grow food from my own garden. I eat it. And I said, yes, that's all right. You're all correct. Yeah, but why do I get still sick all the time? I said, have you looked at your mind? You are always so angry. You're so angry about non-vegan people. You're so angry about nature, etc., how we misuse it. You can eat whatever healthy food you are, but if you're eating it with anger constantly, you're just eating anger. And she goes, oh, wow. Right? So we have to be careful. Are we putting ourselves from one limited box into the next limited box? So this is also what is in the precepts. It's exactly what is teaching within the system of Reiki. It's not just about hands-on healing. It's a way of life. The system of Reiki is a way of life. Are we leading a way of life of no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to our way, and being compassionate? That is the ultimate healing we can give ourselves. So I'll finish with this one question. And I'm also going to answer it for you, so don't worry. What, if we look at the precept, compassion, what is the most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves? Is to lay bare our true nature. Is to lay bare our divine being. What is the most compassionate thing we can do for someone else? Helping them to lay bare their great bright light, their divine being, because that is the most important element. And that is heavily interlinked with the right state of mind, right? The mind of compassion and kindness. Okay, hope this all makes sense. Question time. If there's any questions, if not, I keep drinking my water.
Hi there. I was just interested, I guess, within energy healing and hands-on healing, and I take on that you said the system of Reiki is not only about the energy, or that's not the focus. But my question is, what do you think about protecting your energy? And if you do go into hands-on healing, what's your preparation in terms of protecting yourself or clearing your space?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good question. If we have another hour to talk about, no, but I try to do it very quickly. So here we come back again to the right practice in the right way. So first of all, when we look at the precepts, one element is already do not worry, right? So we have to ask ourselves, if I protect myself, what is the base of this protection? What is the need of me feeling that I need to protect myself? Worry, fear. I might pick up that person's energy. I might pick up the person's issues. And then here we can say, okay, if I'm doing hands-on healing, say on Jamie, and I need to protect myself, right, as the practitioner, because maybe I pick something up from Jamie, then in reality, I also have to ask Jamie to protect herself, because maybe she picked something up from Frans, because Frans still has issues as well, right? I'm not yet this great bright light. And as we all know, touching is a two-way street, right? If you would stand still, Jamie, and I come over and I give you a hug, then we say, Frans is giving Jamie a hug, right? But that is a limited viewpoint, because maybe you is just standing still and I'm doing the action. So therefore we say Frans is giving Jamie a hug. But at the same time that I hug you, you're hugging me back. Even if you don't do anything with your physical body, we're still hugging each other, right? That's another level. Make sense? So it's the same when we do hands-on healing on someone else. We might say Frans is doing hands-on healing on someone else, but at the same time that I touch you, you are touching me. You might not physically put your hands there. Or in other words, if I touch this, Frans is touching the glass. But at the same time, the glass is also touching me. I can feel the coolness or the heat of the glass, right? If the glass is really hot, I burn myself. So therefore, the glass is also affecting me. So if I really say I have to protect myself during hands-on healing, then I also should say, well, to my client, you have to protect yourself. Now we both protected. How is the healing going to really take place? Because we have put boundaries up, right? Why do we feel the need to put boundaries up? Because there's a certain worry or fear. And therefore, sometimes sometimes we go into hands-on healing on other people way too fast. We first need to make sure, and yes, in Reiki, in my Reiki 1 classes, I teach some hands-on healing on other people, on family and friends. But if you really want to practice it on other people, you need to move to Reiki 2. Why? Not because you learn very specific techniques, but hopefully in the right way, in the right order, like making that cake. We've been making this cake every day, so we know exactly how it feels like, how long, etc. Through doing hands-on healing on ourselves, through these meditation practices, what are the core of the system of Reiki, that grounding and centering within ourselves. As I said before, the more grounded and centered we in ourselves, do we get less angry, or more angry? Do we get less worried or more worried? So the more centered I am in myself, the less I feel the need to protect myself. So in the beginning, we might still say to the student, yeah, if you feel the need to protect yourself, go ahead. But see it not so much as putting like a barrier, but really grounding yourself in your body, right? That you feel really grounded and centered in your body. Here's another question we can ask ourselves. Say, I live here in the city, so 2 minutes, I'm in downtown. If I walk fearfully, I put a protection over me like this, or I walk at ease, being wide open. In which state do I get more abused or attacked? And when I walk like this, because the attacker sees I'm vulnerable. I had a really interesting experience. I was in America, in Cincinnati, and it was evening, and these 3 young dudes with golden chains came on these electric little steps, you know, and they were like slipping, like doing all these kind of tricks, and they tried to, they came towards us as a little bit intimidating, right? And so it was a very quiet area. I was walking with a friend there, Maria, and so we're walking along, and I just stayed open. And so the one is slipping in front of me. And so instead of being scared or angry, I said, hey man, that looks so cool. I've never been on one of those steps. Can I try it? Their energy flipped like this. The guy stops. He said, yeah, man, that'll be great. Yo, he was like this, right? So I said, how does it work? So I chatted. He showed me how it worked. I tried it. Can I do some slipping? They were laughing. It didn't work, of course. They left in a very different space. Hey, guy, thank you. Instead of being in this intimidating thing. So the way we look at the protection is, again, coming from our state of mind. That makes sense? But not easy if we still have a lot of worry, anxiety, lots of fears. Then maybe we need to do more practice. Maybe we need to do more correct practice so that we feel really stable. To be truthful, I don't protect myself during hands-on healing or even in daily life. I feel actually that the wide openness is the best protection. So to be in a state of mind of spaciousness, but grounded spaciousness, not spaciousness where we are like this, but actually in a very grounded spaciousness. Because if we feel wide open like space, say we can see the space here in front of my computer, I cannot hurt it. I can take a scissor and cut it, but nothing happens, right? Of course, we might be hurt physically, but if my mind is very spacious, then I also feel less angry and worried towards that. That makes sense? So therefore, again, the precepts are pointing to that state of mind. Hope that makes sense in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And I think just reflecting on my own journey, it's again working on yourself, and then, you know, having some clients and moving through the stages. And yeah, I'm looking to teach, but it's not just yet, but you've got to keep moving through the stages. So yeah, that all makes sense and resonates. Thank you.
Yeah, I always say to people, I said, oh, it's great to do, it's so easy in a way to do hands-on healing. It's so easy to teach, but dealing with your clients and students shit, that is a whole different ball game. Right? Because stuff comes up, you know, and if you cannot deal with it, then you better maybe first work on yourself, make sure that you become very stable and centered and grounded before helping other people. And that, yeah, this is why I think also, why do we practice? And this is nowadays sometimes if we enter the system of Reiki already just to say, I want to make a business out of it, I want to become a healer, I want to do treatments, I want to teach, that is then why we start to practice. And if there's some motivation, then we might not practice with the why to become more stable and grounded, secure, to become less angry and worried. Therefore, that will not be infused in how we do hands-on healing and how we teach. And therefore, our teaching and hands-on healing will be very unstable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And just for context, you know, I still have a full-time job. And so we talk about that spaciousness, having spaciousness between clients and being grounded and, you know, still having that joyful, grateful life on our own. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why, again, today is so important, because it means don't make a distinction between your practice, your hands-on healing, your teaching, your spiritual practice, and daily life. They're actually one and the same thing, right? And then when we start to infuse it all in our daily life, because normally we say, oh, now I'm doing my spiritual practice, and now I'm doing my work, or now I'm doing my spiritual practice, and now I'm with friends. Now we divide it, but it should not be divided. Our life should be a spiritual life. Doesn't mean that we cannot say fucking shit. It means, are we less angry and worried in our daily life? Can we infuse our daily life with that kind of spiritual quality, that we kind and compassionate in our workplace, in how we interact with the neighbors, with people out on the street, with our boyfriend and girlfriend, or both boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm not sure what you're up to, but do you know what I'm trying to say? So yeah, don't compartmentalize your spiritual practice and your daily life. In fact, they should be one and the same thing. Anybody else a question? So the more we really start to infuse our daily life with that spirituality. So for example, say I'm in a cafe and I sit there, and then I might need to wait 2 minutes for my coffee. Or instead of sitting there, well, angry it's taking too long, or worrying if the coffee would be good, or being angry about something what happened the other day, or worried about something what's going to happen, I can just do a couple of deep breaths into the hara, into your belly. I can think about the precepts for a second. So again, I'm in the same cafe. It's my favorite cafe. I go to once a day. If I'm home, I have a little coffee. It's just around the corner. And there's one lady behind the counter. She goes, Frans, I noticed this, you know, when you're in this cafe, the majority of people who come in here acknowledge you. They say hello. You might even have a little chat. I said, there's some others who have that, but most people, they don't. They just sit here. I said, there's something about, what is it about you? And I said, well, I sit here and try to be as open as I can at that moment in time. Of course, the more we are open, the more we engaging in an open way with the world. If I'm closed and need to feel protected and feel safe like this, not many people are going to interact with you, right? Then we might start to feel lonely, etc., etc. So here's another thing. The more I feel the need to protect myself during my hands-on healing or in class, that is what I'm training myself to do. So that might, if I'm not careful, that might slip into my daily life. Suddenly I go into a cafe and it's a little bit overwhelming and whatever. And then I go, oh, I need to protect myself. And suddenly we go, I'm feeling very lonely lately. Well, because you've been protecting yourself, you've been training yourself to protect yourself, and now this starts to spill into your daily life. So if I train myself instead by being very grounded and centered, that I can absorb whatever needs to be absorbed because I feel stable and grounded in my meditation practice, then this also starts to infuse in my daily life, right? So therefore, again, we have to look at why, right? Why, how, etc. Then we can change really our life. Then we can really change our practice. And then when we practice correctly, I get the cake correctly, and then I can share the cake. But if I practice incorrectly and I still have all this fear, worry, and then I'm just sharing anger, fear, worry, and anxiety. Therefore, then society will not be so great because I'm part of that sharing. So yeah, very important to see how our practice can alter our life in lots of different ways, right? The way I make my cake can alter the way the cake comes out of the oven. Can I eat it? Can I not eat it? Is it an angry cake or a compassionate cake? What seeds am I planting? Am I planting the seed of anger and worry, or am I planting the seed of compassion? If I'm planting the seed of worry in my practice, then that starts to grow, right? It's very simple, but sometimes we don't see it. And then we wonder, why am I worried all the time? I have a friend, this is a true story. I have a friend, she practiced some very specific martial arts where a lot of bodyguards practice it, and they actually practice with real guns, knives, etc. And they reenact all of this stuff. And I saw her last year and I said, how are you doing? And she said, Frans, it's strange because I'm practicing, you know, as this martial arts, being strong. I mean, muscles is like, and she said, we practice these combat training for if there's situations happening in the world, you know, or if I need to be a bodyguard. He said, but I feel really fearful in my daily life. I'm becoming more fearful when I just lead my daily life. I said, yeah, but this is what you're planting. This is what you're training. You're not training compassion and kindness, right? So this is what we have to be really careful about. What are we planting? And this is really very simple in the precepts. Right? So I hope you all enjoyed this talk for ARC today. Thank you so much, ARC, for inviting me. It was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Frans. On behalf of all of our members, thank you so much for such an amazing presentation, so informative, and help us to bake that amazing cake and bring it into
I'm hungry.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.